the janitor of Nexus Prime. The twin suns of the Andromeda sector shimmered off the crystal towers of Arinder Prime, casting prismatic light across the streets and the grand Imperial Palace. Inside, corridors stretched endlessly, their walls polished to perfection. In one of these corridors, a young human named Ethan Carter pushed a cleaning droid, humming quietly to himself. He had never imagined that life would bring him here, cleaning the palace of the most advanced civilization in this sector. 2 years ago, he had been a struggling biochemistry student on Earth. Buried under student loans with few opportunities for work, he had applied to the Galactic Exchange program on a whim. The offer was simple: work as palace staff, get room and board, and earn enough credits to clear his debts. The only catch: humans were considered outsiders, primitive and weak compared to the dominant Zerani species of the sector. Ethan wiped a smudge from the polished floor, careful to make no mistake. The Zerani were obsessed with cleanliness. Their blue-tinted skin exuded a natural antiseptic, and they viewed humans as walking biohazards. The irony that humans were hired as cleaners was not lost on him. A melodic voice broke the quiet. "Ethan, you missed a spot." He looked up to see Lyran, his supervisor, gliding toward him. Tall, willowy, with glowing purple cranial ridges, Lyran's gaze always seemed to pierce through him. "My apologies, supervisor. I will fix it immediately," Ethan said, bending down to scrub the small smear from the floor. Lyran watched him closely, her eyes blinking in a pattern that made Ethan's head spin. "Remember, the Emperor's address is tomorrow. The palace must be flawless," Lyran reminded him, his voice almost musical. "Yes, sir," Ethan replied, swallowing the exhaustion pressing against him. He had been working for 14 hours straight. His throat burned, and his lips were dry, but he knew better than to ask for a break. By the time Ethan reached the grand atrium, he was barely holding himself upright. The atrium was a wonder of architecture and technology. A vast hall with towering columns of iridescent stone stretching hundreds of meters to a dome of liquid glass. The stars shimmered faintly above, even in daylight. At its center was the eternal fountain, a sacred feature of the palace. Streams of luminescent water danced in intricate patterns, forming images that told the history of the Zerani civilization. Ethan paused at the edge of the atrium, his thirst now unbearable. The water of the fountain looked inviting, glowing softly in the sunlight. He knew the rules. No outsider was allowed to touch the water, let alone drink it. The penalties were severe, but he was so thirsty. With a trembling hand, he cupped some water and brought it to his lips. The liquid was cool and sweet, with a faint metallic tang. Instantly, the dryness in his throat vanished, replaced by a warm tingling that spread through his chest. "Human, what have you done?" Ethan spun around. At the entrance to the atrium stood an older Zerani, unlike any he had seen. His skin was deeper blue, marked with elegant silver patterns. His robes flowed like liquid, signaling a rank far above the ordinary palace staff. "I am sorry, sir. I was just so thirsty," Ethan stammered. "You drank from the eternal fountain," the Zerani said calmly. "You have no idea what you just became." Ethan's heart pounded. The Zerani approached with a graceful, almost mechanical precision. "This water is aqua lumina, infused with nanites containing the entire history and knowledge of the Zerani people. It is sacred, and it is dangerous for non-Zerani to consume." Ethan staggered backward. "Dangerous? But I feel okay." The Zerani studied him, intrigued. "Yes, human. That is what surprises me. The nanites should have caused neural collapse. Yet here you stand. How do you feel?" Strange visions flashed behind Ethan's eyes. Alien cities with impossible architecture, unfamiliar stars, faces he did not recognize yet somehow knew. A tingling spread from his chest to his head. Whispers of thoughts not his own filled his mind. I feel different," Ethan said, trying to make sense of it. "You are becoming the center of a significant event in our civilization," the Zerani said. "The integration has begun. These nanites are attempting to link with your neural pathways to impart knowledge. The process is unpredictable and potentially dangerous. But you are surviving. Ethan's legs shook. He barely managed to stay upright. His mind was racing, images and thoughts colliding in ways he could not control. The palace walls seemed to fade as the whispering knowledge poured into him. You must remain calm, the Zerani continued. Speak to no one of this. The Empire is not yet ready to recognize what has happened. But soon, your role will become crucial. The grand doors of the atrium opened suddenly, and Lyron's voice echoed, Ethan, finish your duties. The Emperor's visit is tomorrow. Ethan nodded, swallowing hard. He returned to his cleaning droid, hands trembling, mind whirling with new perceptions. He realized that his life as a mere janitor was over. Something profound had begun inside him. That night, in his quarters, Ethan collapsed onto his bed. Whispers continued in his head, fragments of alien history, language, and knowledge flowing uncontrollably. His roommate, Kane Darris, looked up from his tablet. You look terrible. Phelan work you too hard again? He joked. Ethan could only manage a weak nod. How could he explain this? I drank the fountain. Something is happening to me. Kane laughed nervously, shaking his head. Yeah, right? Ethan lay back, staring at the ceiling, trying to anchor himself. But the whispers grew louder, forming patterns and images in his mind. He could almost feel the threads of history, the strategies of the Zerani, and the architecture of alien cities. He understood things that no human should comprehend. By the time the sun set, Ethan realized one truth. He was no longer just a human janitor. His life had changed forever, and the universe, vast and full of mysteries, had just opened its doors to him. Ethan Carter, the janitor of Nexus Prime, had unknowingly taken the first step toward a destiny far greater than he could ever imagine. The next morning, the grand atrium shimmered with sunlight reflecting off its crystal columns. Ethan Carter moved carefully, pushing his cleaning droid along the immaculate floor. Though exhaustion lingered from the previous day, a strange energy now coursed through him, making every movement feel lighter, faster, almost instinctive. The whispering in his mind had not stopped. Fragments of alien knowledge, fleeting images of cities and technology, continued to flow through him, and he struggled to make sense of it. The eternal fountain sparkled at the center of the atrium. Its luminescent water twisted and danced, forming holographic stories of the Zerani Empire. Its rise, battles, alliances, and triumphs. Humans were forbidden to touch it. Even looking too long was considered disrespectful. Yet, Ethan found himself drawn toward it, unable to resist the pull that felt almost magnetic. You will regret it, a voice whispered in his mind. Veyron's warning from the previous night, yet thirst gnawed at him, a human weakness he could not ignore. The air in the atrium was dry and slightly too warm, adjusted for Zerani comfort. Ethan's throat burned, and the small water bottle in his bag was empty. He hesitated. Rules were clear. Punishment could be severe, even exile or more extreme consequences for desecrating sacred water. But the warmth spreading through his chest yesterday had not entirely vanished. It lingered like a call. One sip, he thought, just enough to survive the shift. Ethan approached the fountain carefully, hands trembling. He cupped the water in his hands, feeling it heavier than normal. Its surface shimmered unnaturally, almost alive. Slowly, he brought it to his lips. The moment the water touched his tongue, a shock ran through his body. Cool, sweet, and tinged with metallic tang. It surged through him in a wave, washing away the last remnants of his human fatigue. The tingling in his chest spread rapidly to his limbs and up into his skull. He gasped, stumbling backward, barely catching himself on the edge of the fountain. Human, what have you done? Ethan spun around. Archivist Veyron stood at the atrium entrance, his silver-marked skin glowing faintly in the fountain light. His robes flowed as if caught in a breeze, though the air was still. There was no anger in his eyes, only a deep, piercing curiosity. I was just thirsty, Ethan stammered, his heart hammering in his chest. Veyron glided closer, moving with fluid precision that made Ethan feel unsteady. "You drank from the aqua lumina," the archivist said. "This water is not ordinary. It carries the knowledge of our civilization, stored in microscopic nanites. It is sacred, and it is dangerous for any being not prepared to receive it." Ethan's mind raced. "But I feel fine. I'm okay." Veyron tilted his head, his eyes studying him with intense focus. "Fine? Perhaps. Extraordinary, even. The water should have caused catastrophic neural failure in a human. Yet you remain unharmed. Fascinating." Before Ethan could respond, the tingling intensified. His vision blurred, then sharpened. Suddenly, he could see patterns in the fountain's water that he could not comprehend before. Mathematical sequences, energy flows, even the paths of tiny nanites moving within the liquid. Whispers rose in his mind, phrases in a language he could not speak but somehow understood. "Integration has begun," Veyron said, his voice calm yet commanding. "The nanites are attempting to link with your neural pathways. Their purpose is to transfer the collective knowledge and experience of the Zerani people. The process is unpredictable for humans. Some perish. Some emerge, changed." Ethan staggered back, gripping the fountain edge. Memories not his own flashed through his mind. Cities that defied gravity, alien starscapes, alien beings conversing in ways that defied logic. His head throbbed, and the whispers became almost coherent thoughts, forming patterns in his mind. "Changed how?" he asked, his voice trembling. Veyron's silver eyes glimmered. "Some gain knowledge far beyond their natural capacity. Some lose their sanity. You human are surviving. That is remarkable." Ethan tried to speak, but his mind felt crowded with foreign concepts. He understood the architecture of the palace without ever having studied it. He saw energy flows within the water, in the air, in the structure itself. He could anticipate small movements of the cleaning droid, even the shifting of dust on the floor. Everything became sharper, clearer, overwhelming. Veyron leaned closer. "You must hide this. Speak of nothing you saw or felt. The Empire is not ready for outsiders with such power. Yet, I sense potential. You may become crucial to events that shape the sector." Suddenly, the atrium doors swished open. Lyron's melodic voice rang out. "Ethan, complete your duties. The Emperor inspects tomorrow." Ethan bowed slightly, careful to maintain the illusion of normalcy. But inside, his mind raced faster than ever. He could feel the whispers guiding him, showing him how to clean efficiently, how to anticipate the flow of palace traffic, even glimpsing future events in faint flashes. Hours passed. Each movement became instinctive. Dust no longer appeared. Floors gleamed under his touch. Ethan's thirst for water had been replaced by a hunger for understanding. He wanted to know what the whispers meant, what the visions implied. By the end of the shift, he returned to his quarters, legs weak but mind alive. Kane Darris, his roommate, looked up from a device. "You look terrible, man. Phelan work you to death again." Ethan shook his head. "It's not that. Something happened at the fountain." Kane frowned. "The fountain? Don't tell me you actually." Ethan cut him off. "I drank it, and now, I think I'm changing. My mind, it's not mine alone anymore." Kane laughed nervously. "Yeah, right. You need sleep, that's all." Ethan lay back, staring at the ceiling. The whispers continued, sometimes forming words, sometimes just patterns of thought. He could feel knowledge weaving into his mind, slowly, steadily, like water flowing through new channels. Tomorrow, the Emperor would address the palace. Tomorrow, the atrium would shine brighter than ever. And Ethan Carter, simple human janitor, knew one thing. His life was no longer simple. The forbidden sip had begun a transformation he could neither control nor fully understand. The janitor of Nexus Prime had crossed the line between human and something greater. And the universe was watching. The day after the forbidden sip, Ethan Carter woke in his quarters, drenched in sweat, his heart still racing from the visions that had flooded his mind. The whispers from the Aqua Lumina nanites were stronger now, forming fragments of ideas, images, and knowledge that made him dizzy with their complexity. He rubbed his temples and sat on the edge of the bed. His roommate, Kane Darris, was already awake, munching on a breakfast bar. "You slept through half your shift yesterday. Feeling better?" Kane asked casually. Ethan could only shake his head. "Better? I don't think I am the same, Kane. Something happened to me yesterday. I drank the fountain water, and now my mind. It's not mine anymore." Kane laughed nervously. "Aha, sure. Must have been some crazy fever." But Ethan knew better. The whispers were persistent, almost like a chorus of voices speaking in overlapping patterns. They were in a language he didn't consciously understand, yet he could comprehend them. Thoughts not his own flowed into his mind. Zerani mathematics, alien histories, star maps, even strange scientific concepts that seemed impossible to grasp in a single lifetime. He staggered to the window of their quarters and looked out over the glowing towers of Arinder Prime. Light shimmered off the crystal spires, and Ethan realized he could see things he hadn't noticed before. Energy currents flowing between buildings, faint patterns of structural stress in the palace, and the hidden pathways of the palace guards as they moved through the corridors. What is happening to me?" he whispered. A gentle, almost imperceptible vibration ran through his skull. Images of distant stars flashed before his eyes. Cities he had never seen appeared, impossibly complex, some floating, some growing in spirals, some shaped like enormous shells. Faces of alien beings flickered, some smiling, some serious, but all familiar in a way that unsettled him. Footsteps echoed in the hallway. Archivist Veron appeared at the door, his presence calm but commanding. His silver-patterned skin shimmered under the artificial lights. "You are experiencing the awakening," he said softly. "The nanites are integrating with your neural pathways. Your human mind is absorbing knowledge not meant for your species. It is dangerous, yes, but you are surviving. That is extraordinary." Ethan swallowed hard. "I feel everything at once. Thoughts, images. I can't focus." "Focus is unnecessary right now," Veron replied. "Absorption comes first. Understanding comes later. The whispers you hear, they are fragments of our civilization's collective memory. Some of it may feel overwhelming. Some of it may frighten you. That is normal. You must learn patience." Ethan tried to stand, but his legs shook. "How long will this take? Days, weeks, perhaps months?" "The integration is gradual, but it is already accelerating faster than anticipated. Your physiology is unique, human, yet somehow compatible. I have not seen this before." The archivist stepped closer. "You are not a mere janitor anymore. You are a vessel of knowledge. What you do now may shape the future of the Zerani Empire and humans' place within it. But control is essential. If the nanites overwhelm your mind, you could disappear." Fear surged through Ethan. "Disappear?" "Yes," Veron said calmly. "Your consciousness could fracture, but you are surviving. That is remarkable." The whispers grew louder, more coherent. Ethan could now understand snippets of the Zerani language. He heard commands, histories, philosophical debates, even star maps with routes of trade and travel. Every moment was a challenge to his human brain, yet he could process more than he ever thought possible. He walked to the training chamber near the atrium, moving cautiously. His cleaning duties had not stopped. If the palace discovered any dereliction of duty, there would be consequences. But as he moved, he realized he could predict where the droid would roll, where dust would collect, and even the footsteps of the supervisors and guards. His body moved almost automatically, guided by the whispers of knowledge in his mind. By mid-morning, the palace felt different. Ethan could see the architecture, not just as walls and floors, but as networks of energy and structure. He could anticipate minor shifts, small stresses, and even subtle movements in the fountains and columns. The palace itself seemed alive to him, and he understood it as one might understand a living organism. Suddenly, a piercing pain shot through his head. Ethan fell to his knees, clutching at his temples. Faces, voices, and images swirled violently in his vision. Alien cities, floating starships, strange creatures with impossible forms. Everything collided at once. He screamed, feeling as though his skull might split open. "Control yourself, human," Veyron's voice echoed in his mind and aloud. "This is the true test. The integration is attempting to expand your understanding. Do not resist. Flow with it." Ethan clenched his teeth and focused. Slowly, the chaos in his mind began to settle. He could separate the voices, understanding one thought at a time. Images became less terrifying and more meaningful. Knowledge unfolded in patterns, like a language revealing itself. When he finally opened his eyes, the atrium looked the same, yet he saw it differently. Every reflection, every shadow, every ripple of water in the eternal fountain was now part of a larger design he could comprehend. His mind raced, connecting dots he had never noticed before. "You are progressing faster than I anticipated," Veyron said, observing him. "You may become a bridge between humans and Zerani, a vessel for knowledge that could alter the balance of power in the sector. But be wary, the Emperor will not understand your transformation. Speak to no one. Trust no one with what you have become, except me." Ethan nodded, still trying to breathe evenly. He felt exhaustion, yet also exhilaration. The whispers continued, now a constant hum in the back of his mind. He was beginning to see the universe in ways humans were never meant to see. By nightfall, Ethan lay in his bed, staring at the ceiling. The whispering knowledge was now part of him. He could feel it moving, shaping him, teaching him. He realized one thing with clarity. His life as a simple human janitor was over. The Aqua Lumina had chosen him, and his awakening had begun. Somewhere deep within, a voice, Veyron's or perhaps the whispers themselves, said softly, "Your journey has only just begun, Ethan Carter. You are no longer merely human. You are something else. Something greater." And with that thought, Ethan finally closed his eyes, knowing the path ahead would be unlike anything he had ever imagined. By the next morning, the grand atrium of Arinder Prime felt like a new world to Ethan Carter. The sun glinted off the crystal columns, but for him, the beauty of the architecture was more than surface deep. He could feel the energy flow within the palace, the tiny vibrations of the floor beneath his feet, and the subtle patterns of air movement around the eternal fountain. Every step he took seemed guided by the whispers in his mind, now clearer than ever. The Aqua Lumina nanites were still integrating with his brain, and the whispers had begun to form coherent thoughts. Snippets of Zerani history played in his mind, like short films, showing centuries of battles, alliances, and discoveries. He understood their science in ways he could never have imagined. Alien languages floated through him. Some he could read instantly, some he merely sensed. Knowledge that took Zerani scholars decades to master was now accessible to him in flashes. Ethan moved through the atrium on his cleaning rounds, but it was no longer just a chore. He could anticipate the movement of the cleaning droid, predict where dust would settle, and even detect the faint presence of guards approaching. His human instincts had been amplified, enhanced by alien knowledge. He realized with a mix of awe and fear that he was becoming something more than human. A soft chime echoed from his communicator. He glanced at it. A message from Lyran, his supervisor. "Ethan, continue with the atrium. The Emperor's address is tomorrow." Ethan nodded, but inside, his mind was elsewhere. The whispers were growing stronger, forming patterns of thought he had never experienced. He could feel the memories of Zerani scholars, generals, and philosophers weaving into his consciousness. It was like standing at the center of a vast library, with every scroll, tablet, and hologram opening all at once, spilling knowledge into him. He stopped near the eternal fountain, gazing at the dancing water. The luminescent streams twisted in impossible patterns. Now more than just beautiful, they made sense. He could see the algorithms controlling the water, the sequences of nanites moving inside, the energy flows that sustained the holographic images. It was overwhelming, but exhilarating. "You must focus, Ethan," Veyron's voice said, appearing silently at the atrium entrance. The archivist's silver markings glimmered in the fountain's light. The integration is reaching a critical stage. Your human mind will struggle, but the whispers are guiding you. They are not your enemy. They are your teachers. Ethan swallowed hard. I can feel it, but it's too much. I see things I don't understand. Memories, languages, even star maps. That is to be expected, Veron replied. You are no longer a mere human. You are a vessel for knowledge far beyond your species. Control is your only safeguard. The whispers intensified, now forming coherent sentences. A phrase in Zerani drifted into Ethan's mind. The vessel shall bridge worlds. He understood it instantly, though the concept was beyond normal human comprehension. The Nanites were not only giving him knowledge, they were shaping his purpose. As he moved through the atrium, Ethan noticed subtle shifts in his own abilities. He could anticipate where his cleaning droid would move, where smudges might appear, even minor faults in the architecture. He began adjusting his steps, movements almost instinctively, as if guided by the palace itself. By mid-afternoon, he returned to the worker dormitory. His roommate, Kane Darris, looked up from a tablet. You look different. Did Phelan work you to death again? Ethan shook his head. It's not just work. Something is happening to me. Can see things now. Patterns, flows, histories, even the whispers of people I've never met. Kane frowned. Are you sure you're okay? Ethan smiled faintly, though it was nervous. I've never been more aware in my life. My mind, it's not mine alone anymore. And it's only going to get stronger. The whispers continued to pulse in his mind, sometimes urgent, sometimes calm. They were teaching him, guiding him, revealing knowledge in fragments that slowly formed a cohesive whole. He could feel the integration deepening, connecting him to the Zerani civilization in ways he couldn't have imagined. He practiced focusing, trying to filter the flood of information. At first, it was impossible. Visions clashed, memories overlapped, but gradually, he learned to isolate threads of thought. He could study a star map without losing himself in it, decipher an alien language without pain, and even sense the patterns in the palace architecture as though it were a living organism. By evening, Ethan stood again in front of the eternal fountain. The light from the luminescent water reflected in his wide eyes. He could feel a presence in the whispers now, almost like someone guiding him deliberately. It was Veron, or perhaps the combined consciousness of the Aqualumina itself. The Nanites had not just imparted knowledge. They were teaching him purpose, preparing him for something larger than he could comprehend. Suddenly, he heard the faintest sound of footsteps. A shadow moved at the edge of the atrium. Ethan's senses, sharpened beyond normal human capacity, detected a figure approaching, a palace guard. But he also felt the guard's intent, the rhythm of his steps, the slight hesitation in his movement. With almost supernatural awareness, Ethan adjusted his own path, avoiding collision and continuing his cleaning silently. The whispering knowledge flowed through him like a river, guiding his thoughts and actions. He realized that his human limitations were fading. His perception was expanding, allowing him to act faster, think faster, and understand more than he ever had before. That night, Ethan lay on his bed, staring at the ceiling. The whispers had become part of him, inseparable from his own thoughts. He could feel the knowledge forming a framework within his mind, a scaffolding of alien history, technology, and philosophy. It was overwhelming, yet intoxicating. He realized one truth with perfect clarity. He was no longer merely human. The Aqualumina had chosen him, not as a servant or a janitor, but as a bridge between worlds. Knowledge that had taken the Zerani millennia to accumulate was now flowing into him, and with it came responsibility, danger, and an opportunity that no human had ever faced. Ethan closed his eyes, letting the whispers wash over him. Somewhere deep within, a voice, Veron's or the Nanite's own, echoed softly, "Prepare, Ethan Carter. Your awakening is only the beginning." And as he drifted into sleep, he felt it. The quiet, thrilling certainty that his life had changed forever. The grand atrium buzzed with preparation. Crystal columns gleamed under artificial sunlight, polished to perfection by a team of Zerani and human staff alike. Today, the Celestial Emperor would deliver a historic address, the first in 50 years in person. For most palace workers, this was a day of nervous anticipation, but for Ethan Carter, it was something else entirely. His mind was a storm of whispers and knowledge, the effects of the Aqua Lumina integration now fully active. Every vibration, every movement, every sound in the atrium registered in his consciousness with unnerving clarity. Ethan moved through the hall with his cleaning droid, finishing final touches on the polished floor. Normally, he would have struggled under the stress of so many observers, but now he anticipated each footstep, each gesture, and each potential distraction. The whispers in his mind guided him, revealing not only the patterns of movement, but also the history behind every artifact, every decoration, and every ceremonial protocol. From the entrance, Supervisor Lyran observed him, his purple cranial ridges pulsing with approval. "Ethan, the Emperor arrives soon. Ensure the atrium is flawless," Lyran said, his melodic voice echoing. Ethan nodded silently, already aware of the tiniest imperfections in the floor, the light reflections on the fountain, and the alignment of the ceremonial banners. With a thought, he adjusted the cleaning droid, correcting a minor imperfection before it could be noticed. At the center of the atrium, the eternal fountain glimmered as if alive. Streams of luminescent water danced in patterns too complex for a normal human to comprehend, forming three-dimensional images that retold the Zerani Empire's glorious history. For Ethan, however, the dance of the water was no longer just beautiful, it was readable. He could see the sequences of nanites, the energy flows, the minute changes that maintained the holographic images. The whispers guided him, connecting his mind to the intelligence embedded in the fountain itself. Then the doors opened. Guards in polished armor moved with precise choreography as the Celestial Emperor entered, flanked by advisors and nobles. The atrium fell silent. Every being present seemed to pause, caught in the awe of the Emperor's presence. Ethan, however, felt something else, a deep, intuitive understanding of the room's energy. The nanites in his mind had mapped every movement, every probable action, every ripple of attention. Veron appeared silently beside him, a reassuring presence. "Today, you must observe and remain unnoticed," the archivist whispered. "But take note, your awareness may be needed soon. The Emperor will not understand what you are capable of, yet you are already part of the unfolding events." Ethan's eyes followed the Emperor as he moved gracefully toward the podium at the far end of the atrium. Every motion, every gesture, seemed to communicate far more than mere words. Through the whispers, Ethan understood the subtle signals. The loyalty of the advisors, the unspoken tensions among the nobles, the secret alignments of power hidden behind ceremonial courtesy. The Emperor began to speak. His voice was rich, resonant, and filled with authority. He praised the Zerani achievements, reminded the citizens of the unity and strength of the Empire, and unveiled new plans for exploration beyond their known sector. Every word was accompanied by intricate gestures, holographic projections, and energy flows that only someone attuned could fully perceive. Ethan understood the layers beneath the speech, the political maneuvers, the hidden warnings, the subtle commands embedded for the Council's understanding. A soft surge of energy rippled through Ethan. The whispers were now almost a chorus, guiding him, connecting him to the Emperor's subtle signals. He realized that, for the first time, he could anticipate what would be said before the words left the Emperor's lips, not through supernatural ability, but through understanding of patterns and knowledge that transcended his human experience. Midway through the address, a commotion erupted near one of the side entrances. A small group of junior officials had misplaced ceremonial documents, panicking under the scrutiny of the Emperor's gaze. Ethan's mind acted faster than his body. With precise steps, he directed the cleaning droid to block the path and subtly nudged a guard toward the officials, correcting the situation before anyone noticed. Veron's voice echoed softly in his mind, almost a part of the whispers. "You see, Ethan? Your integration allows observation and action beyond normal capacity. But control is essential. Do not act beyond what is necessary. Remember your place. The eyes of the Empire are upon you, even if they do not see you. Ethan's chest pulsed with warmth, the same warmth he had felt the day he drank from the eternal fountain. He felt the whispers guiding his actions, blending knowledge and intuition into seamless decision-making. The atrium, once a vast, intimidating space, now felt like an extension of his mind. As the Emperor concluded his address, a wave of applause swept through the crowd. Ethan observed quietly, noting the subtle reactions. Alliances formed, rivalries hardened, and the threads of political influence woven into the ceremonial gathering. The whispers in his mind began cataloging, analyzing, and connecting these reactions to a larger understanding of the Empire's future. After the Emperor departed, Veyron appeared once more. "Well done, Ethan," he said softly. "You remained unseen, yet your awareness and action maintained order. You are evolving faster than expected. Soon, you will need to make choices that affect not only your life but the balance of this sector. The Emperor, the Council, even the Archives, they may not yet recognize your importance. But you will." Ethan nodded, still trying to process the magnitude of what he had experienced. He had witnessed the Emperor, not as a subject of awe but as a student of the subtle forces at play. His mind, now a blend of human perception and Zerani knowledge, had absorbed more in a single day than most humans could comprehend in a lifetime. That night, as he returned to his quarters, Ethan reflected on the events. The whispers continued, guiding his thoughts, helping him organize and make sense of the flood of information. He realized the transformation that had begun with the Forbidden Sip was accelerating. His role in the unfolding events of the Empire was becoming clear. He was no longer just a janitor, no longer just a human. He was a witness, a learner, and perhaps a participant in something far greater than himself. Lying in bed, Ethan closed his eyes. The eternal fountain's glow and the whispers lingered in his mind. He could feel the future stretching before him, threads of possibility connecting to his every action. The Emperor's address was only the beginning. His awakening was far from complete. And in the quiet hum of the dormitory, Ethan Carter understood one truth. The universe had changed for him forever, and there was no turning back. The day after the Emperor's address, the palace of Arinder Prime hummed with activity. Preparations for the grand ceremonial banquet were underway, and every corridor and hall glimmered with perfection. For most palace workers, it was a day of exhaustion and anxiety. For Ethan Carter, it was something else entirely. His mind was alive with whispers, flowing knowledge from the Aqua Lumina, guiding his every thought and movement. Ethan moved through the corridors, checking the cleaning droid's path. Dust and imperfections were no longer problems. They were puzzles he could solve instantly. He could anticipate minor accidents before they happened, predict the movements of the palace staff, and even sense the tension in those around him. The whispers in his mind were no longer just information. They were guidance, shaping his perception of the palace and its inhabitants. As he rounded a corner near the ceremonial kitchens, a sudden commotion caught his attention. A tray of delicate crystal vessels, intended for the Emperor's banquet, teetered dangerously on the edge of a serving table. The kitchen staff panicked, unsure how to save them without causing disaster. Without thinking, Ethan acted. He extended his hand toward the tray, but before it touched his fingers, he saw the precise sequence of movements needed to stabilize it. He adjusted the droid's path and directed a waiter with a subtle motion, preventing the vessels from falling. The entire event seemed instantaneous, yet his mind recorded every detail, every angle, every possible outcome. One of the chefs, a Zerani with deep blue skin and silver markings, turned toward him, eyes wide. "How did you?" Ethan smiled faintly, shaking his head. "Just paying attention." The whispers in his mind flowed faster now. They weren't just teaching him knowledge, they were testing him. Each situation in the palace became a subtle challenge. Predicting movements, preventing accidents, noticing irregularities, and understanding the intentions of those around him. The Aqua Lumina integration was pushing him, shaping him into something far beyond a human janitor. By mid-morning, Archivist Veron appeared beside him silently, his silver patterns glowing faintly. "Your first test begins today," he said calmly. "The Emperor's banquet is a controlled environment, but it will test your perception, your control, and your judgment. Remember, Ethan, your integration is unique. Your abilities are growing, but so is the risk. Act wisely." Ethan nodded, feeling the hum of whispers in his mind. He knew the archivist meant that every action, even a minor one, could have consequences. The banquet hall, once intimidating in its grandeur, now seemed like a network of patterns, possibilities, and flows of energy he could read and anticipate. Hours later, the guests arrived. Nobles, diplomats, and council members filled the hall, their movements precise, their expressions carefully measured. The Emperor sat at the center, a beacon of authority. Ethan moved among the staff, cleaning, adjusting, observing, but his awareness was far beyond his tasks. He could sense subtle tensions, whispered arguments, unspoken rivalries, secret alliances. Every gesture, every glance, every ripple of attention was a thread he could follow. Then the challenge appeared. A minor technical glitch caused a holographic projection above the banquet table to flicker and distort. It was subtle, most would not have noticed, but Ethan did. The projection contained vital ceremonial images representing centuries of Zerani history. A disruption could be seen as a grave insult. Ethan acted instinctively. His mind calculated the energy flows, the projection's mechanics, and the angles of interference. With a flick of his wrist and a subtle adjustment of a nearby device, he stabilized the hologram. The projection shimmered back into perfect alignment, and no one noticed the near disaster. Veron appeared in the corner of his vision, nodding faintly. The whispers in Ethan's mind carried a sense of approval, a reward for correct judgment. Later, during the banquet, a guest spilled a drink near a delicate artifact. Time seemed to slow for Ethan. His senses were heightened, the whispers guiding him. He reached the artifact before the spill could touch it, moving with precision, skill, and speed that felt almost superhuman. Again, the palace remained unaware of his intervention. As the night progressed, Ethan realized that these were not mere accidents. They were tests of his perception, his control, and his understanding of the palace's flow. The whispers pushed him, challenging him to integrate human intuition with Zerani knowledge, to act decisively yet discreetly. By the time the banquet concluded, Ethan was exhausted but exhilarated. He had acted hundreds of times without error, preventing disasters invisible to others, and the whispers had guided him flawlessly. His human instincts, once limited and reactive, had merged with the alien knowledge, creating a new form of awareness. Veron appeared one final time that night, observing him quietly. "You have passed the first test, Ethan," he said. "Not with perfection alone, but with awareness and judgment. Remember, this is only the beginning. Greater challenges lie ahead, both within this palace and beyond its walls. Your transformation is accelerating, and soon you will be called to act in ways humans cannot yet comprehend." Ethan nodded, still trying to process the events. He had intervened in countless situations, prevented disasters, and understood things that no human should be able to perceive. The whispers continued, almost singing with approval, and he felt a deep connection to the Aqua Lumina, to the Zerani knowledge, and to a future he could not yet see clearly. As he returned to his quarters, Ethan reflected on the day. The palace, the emperor, the nobles, they had all moved around him like pieces in a complex game, and he had seen the threads connecting them. The integration was no longer subtle, it was transforming him, giving him perception and understanding far beyond ordinary humans. Lying in bed, he felt the whispers pulse gently, guiding him to sleep. He understood one truth clearly. The forbidden sip had set him on a path that could not be undone. The first test had shown him what he was capable of, but the challenges ahead would demand more, far more, than he had ever imagined. And in the quiet darkness, Ethan Carter realized that the palace, the emperor, and the entire Zerani Empire had just become the setting for a destiny he was only beginning to comprehend. The palace of Arinder Prime was quiet now, the echoes of the emperor's banquet fading into memory. For most, The day had been historic, a blend of celebration, protocol, and awe. For Ethan Carter, it had been a revelation. The whispers of the Aqua Lumina still flowed through his mind, now more coherent, more commanding. Knowledge once distant now felt like an extension of his own consciousness. Ethan walked the corridors, his cleaning droid following silently. The palace no longer seemed just a building. It was alive, a network of energy, patterns, and life that he could perceive. He knew which floors were slightly unsteady, where air currents shifted, even which lights flickered at the slightest irregularity. Every corner, every reflection, every movement of the palace staff registered in his awareness. He paused before the eternal fountain. Its water danced in streams of luminescent patterns, telling the story of the Zerani Empire. But for Ethan, the patterns were no longer distant histories. They were lessons, instructions, and warnings all at once. He could see the sequences of the nanites, the energy flows, and the logic behind each design. The whispers flowed in harmony with the water, teaching him how to integrate, interpret, and act upon the knowledge of a civilization thousands of years older than humanity. Veron appeared silently at his side, as if the shadows themselves had shifted to form his figure. "You have passed your first test, Ethan," the archivist said. "The banquet demonstrated your ability to perceive, react, and understand. But now comes the path forward. Your integration is accelerating, and the Empire is unaware of your potential. You are no longer a mere human janitor. You are a vessel, a bridge between worlds." Ethan swallowed, feeling the warmth of the Aqua Lumina pulsing through his chest and limbs. "A vessel for what?" he asked. Veron's silver-marked eyes glimmered. "For knowledge, for understanding, for decisions that will shape the sector. Soon, your abilities will be tested beyond the palace walls. The whispers you hear are guidance, but your judgment must be your own. Power without wisdom is dangerous. Remember that." Ethan nodded. The whispering knowledge in his mind was no longer a burden. It was a companion. It guided him in subtle ways, showing him connections he had never seen before. Alliances hidden in gestures, strategies encoded in ceremonial dances, and truths embedded in the architecture itself. He realized he could influence outcomes without being noticed, manipulate situations with foresight, and understand motives invisible to ordinary observers. The next morning, Ethan returned to his routine cleaning, but it was far from routine. He moved through the atrium and corridors with precision, noticing patterns invisible to anyone else. He observed the palace staff, the guards, and the nobles, understanding the subtleties of their intentions. Every interaction, every action, every word carried meaning. He could predict outcomes, prevent accidents, and subtly influence events, all without drawing attention. Veron appeared again, as he often did, silently observing. "You are ready for the next stage," he said. "Soon, you will need to make choices that affect not only your life but the course of this empire. The Aqua Lumina has chosen you, Ethan Carter. Your awakening is complete, but your journey has just begun." Ethan understood. The forbidden sip had transformed him, and every day brought new challenges, new knowledge, and new responsibilities. He was no longer the human who had arrived at Nexus Prime as a janitor. He was something more, a being intertwined with alien knowledge, capable of perceiving the universe in ways humans could not. As he looked around the grand atrium, he noticed small details that others would overlook. The slight shimmer of a floor tile indicated a stress fracture. The faint vibration in the crystal columns hinted at a structural imbalance. Even the placement of ceremonial banners and the alignment of light reflected hidden messages embedded in Zerani tradition. He could see the palace not just as a building but as a living, breathing entity, and he understood its logic. The whispers in his mind grew louder, but now they were harmonious. They guided, but they did not command. He had control. He realized that knowledge without action was meaningless, and his next step would be to test the limits of what he could do. That evening, Ethan returned to his quarters. Kane Darris looked up from his tablet. "You seem different," Kane said. "Did Phelan work you harder than usual?" Ethan shook his head, smiling faintly. "It's not work. Something else happened." I see things differently now. I understand things I shouldn't, and I can act in ways I never imagined. Kane frowned. Sounds dangerous. Ethan nodded. It is, but it's also incredible. I can't go back to being just a human. The Aqualumina has changed me, and I think I was chosen for a reason. He lay back, staring at the ceiling. The whispers continued, flowing like a river of knowledge through his mind. He could feel the palace, the empire, and even distant worlds as interconnected networks of information and energy. His human mind had been expanded, enhanced, and transformed. Somewhere in the quiet, Veyron's presence lingered, a reminder that observation and guidance were constant. Prepare yourself, Ethan, the archivist's voice whispered. Your abilities will be tested beyond the palace. Knowledge alone is not enough. You must act with wisdom, courage, and discretion. The universe will watch and you will decide the outcome. Ethan closed his eyes, feeling the warmth of the Aqualumina, the flow of alien knowledge, and the quiet hum of power within him. He realized that the palace, the emperor, and the entire Zerani Empire had become the backdrop for his destiny. He was no longer just a janitor. He was a bridge between species, a keeper of knowledge, and a being on the path to shaping the future of the galaxy. And as he drifted into sleep, the whispers carried a promise that his journey had only just begun, and the universe would never be the same again. The janitor of Nexus Prime had awakened.